Beat the game in under 20 minutes. This is your requirement to get the Speed Climber achievement and slay the Spire. In this video, we're going to give you some generic pointers and guides on how you can achieve this with any character, but we're going to focus on some special ways that you can do it using the Watcher. This is not the only way, and as you'll see, I make plenty of mistakes along the way. It's not going to win you any world records, but if you follow these tips, you should, with practice, be able to win a run through the Spire easily with plenty of time to spare. First things first, we need to start our run with the Niao's Lament bonus. This makes enemies in your first 3 combats have 1 hit point each. This is very important early in the game because the early fights are really going to drag on before you've made any alterations to your deck to do big damage. So what you need to do is load up a Watcher run, and if you have more than 2 options available when you see our whale here, just go ahead and abandon your run or lose anywhere before the first act boss. If this happens, then the next time you load up a character, you will have the option to select the 3 1 hit point combats as your starting bonus. As you load up your map, the next thing you want to do is choose a path that has the most question marks, shops, and campfires. This is an easier option than most for our Watcher, as her deck can really get going strong, really by only upgrading Eruption and removing a few defense. Remember, we're going for speed here, so avoiding combats means you move along at a much faster pace. Avoid picking up cards and artifacts that take a while to resolve. For instance, if you take Talk to the Hand, it's going to give you block every time you attack an enemy, but it also triggers the block animation every time you attack an enemy, and that's going to add a few seconds every fight, which over the course of 50 floors could equal, a couple of minutes. When you do have to fight enemies, which you're going to need to fight some in order to get your card rewards, avoid your card rewards that require a lot of setup, that give you block, or anything that really isn't going to help you complete a fight in 1 turn, because that is our big takeaway here. Complete your fights in 1 turn. Enemy turns add a long time from the animations and from the time it takes to end your turn and start theirs, and then they end their turn and go back to yours. So we want to look for cards that give energy generation. We want card draw, because if you run out of cards, it doesn't matter how much energy you have. And finally, we're going to find stuff that has heavy damage. So look for cards like Wheel Kick. This is going to do huge damage and draw you cards at the same time. Look for cards like Empty Mind. This is going to draw cards and help you to change stances, which if you're going from Calm to Wrath or just exiting Calm, you're going to get more energy. If you're leaving Wrath, you can do this strategically if you do happen to go into the end of a turn to cut down the amount of damage you're taking by half. Look for cards like Rushdown. This is going to draw you cards every time you enter Wrath, which you're going to hope to do multiple times a turn. This also means you need to look for cards that change your stance, like Fear No Evil, which will take you into Calm and exit Wrath, but also cards that are going to put you into Wrath, like Tantrum. When it comes to shops, we're looking for a few main things. First of all, you're going to get rid of almost all of your defend cards. Remember, our goal here is to leave the enemy without a chance to attack us. So why do you need to have these basic block cards to begin with? As far as relics go, Akabeko is a great card to kick your damage game off quickly. It adds 8 to your initial attack each battle. So if you have a card where you can start in Wrath, then you're going to boost that even further. Look for artifacts that give you strength, like Vajra. Especially look for other ways you can apply vulnerable to enemies with articles like Bag of Marbles. Hopefully by now you've been able to find at least a couple of useful cards, you've upgraded Eruption, and you've removed a couple of defense cards, and now you're ready to fight the Act 1 boss after about 3 minutes into your run. Once you dispatch the boss, there are a few really solid rares that you're going to look for. Things like Ragnarok, which does a ton of AoE damage. You could find Deus Ex Machina, which will give you on-demand energy when you're at a crucial moment in the fight. Boss relics are also going to be helpful. Here's some that you really want to look out for. Something like Violet Lotus. This is going to give you an additional energy every time you exit Calm. That one's especially helpful if you have the Teardrop Locket. Philosopher's Stone isn't going to be too terrible here since we're not planning to give the enemy too many turns to hit us anyways. And on that note, Runic Dome is not going to have any downsides if you don't give your enemies any turns. Moving on to Act 2, there are some really solid events that you're going to want to hunt for. First, if you find the Ritual Dagger room, this can be really helpful depending on what cards you already have. Just remember, it can take some time to cycle through your deck to make sure that it's on hand for the killing blow, so if you've been collecting a lot of cards, it might be better to just take the Golden Run. But the Ritual Dagger can be really huge for some big one-shots on some of the harder enemies if you can make it work. Also remember that Ritual Dagger can leave you stranded in fights with multiple enemies. One of the best events I find in Act 2 is the Augmenter event, which is going to give you the Mutagenic Strength artifact, and that's going to boost your turn 1 strength by 3 every combat. Events that I like to pass on for Act 2 include Apparitions. You need as much health going forward as possible, so losing half your health isn't really going to be helpful. If you have managed to find expensive cards like Wheel Kick, Wallop, or Ragnarok, search for the Sacred Tome, and if you get lucky enough, you'll find the Necronomicon. While this does give you a curse, it also makes the first attack you play each turn that costs 2 or more play twice. If you combine that with Wrath, Vulnerable, and other boosts, this can really chip away at your enemies quickly. Keep in mind, going through Act 2, that you do have to fight the boss, which is going to be one of the most difficult fights if you thin down your deck a lot in a speedrun. So it might be a good idea to keep an eye out for Wallop or other cards that are going to help boost your health on critical turns. Hopefully by now you have completed one of the hardest fights in the game, and you're ready to push through Act 3. There's really not a whole lot going on here, but I do recommend avoiding elites and combats as much as possible so that you can stay away from things like the Reptomancer, things like the Nemesis, and the Transient. Those are going to be really long fights, and a lot of your enemies just have huge amounts of health, and that's going to chip away at your precious time. There is an event that is the portal to the final boss that lets you skip most of the act. That can be incredibly useful here. Otherwise, just keep focusing down your deck to the cards you need, and don't forget to take a peek at the final boss to see which one you're up against so you can make any last-minute refinements. Fighting the final boss, do remember that they are going to hit you hard, so keep an eye on what they're going to do, or else you might end up losing the whole run on the last floor. Say caw-caw if you fight the cultist. And let me know down in the comments below, what have you done to get this achievement, and what's your best time? 12 minutes here was my fastest run so far. I'm still looking for better, but